Welcome to this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KJ, a show where we explore the stories behind the stories. Here we dive into the worlds created by authors, discover their inspirations, and ensure that you walk away enriched and inspired. And today we have with us author Dr. Jack Stoltzfus. He's a clinical psychologist and America's launch coach, and his mission is to help parents support their adult child's transition to self-sufficient independence while maintaining a caring bond with their parents. And we'll talk about his latest book, The Parents Launch Coach, Loving and Letting Go of Our Adult Children. Let's dive into the story behind the story. Welcome to the show, Dr. Jack.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome once again to the KAJ Masterclass, this time on the Author's Voice with KAJ Dr. Jack. And this time we'll be talking about your book. And when we are talking about the book, let's talk a bit about the inspiration to become an author. How did this journey towards becoming an author begin? Was it all of a sudden, or it was a planned effort?
Well, the roots of the book actually relate to my own personal story in my family, because I had a experience of I would describe it as an estranged relationship with my father. He was a good provider to the family. He didn't have alcohol problems or gambling or anything. He was faithful to my mother, but was very emotionally distant with me and somewhat critical through my teen and into my young adult years. And I realized, partly because I was going through some training as a therapist, that I needed to work out this relationship with my dad. And in my family, there was a kind of unspoken rule: we don't tell each other I love you or care about you. And so my dad never expressed verbally that, and didn't show a lot of emotion to me. So one time I went home and I had grown a beard, and he was kind of upset about that. So he didn't talk to me during the time that I was home. So that added to my feeling that he didn't really care about me. And that reduced some of my communication with him. But I eventually realized that I had never expressed my love for him, and so I needed to do that. And then on one occasion when I was home, I did exactly that. I was taking him to the airport. He had a flight going out, and waited till the last minute. I told him I loved him, and he said what I call the two-headed parent response. Your mother and I love you too. So it wasn't real personal, but it felt good for me to get that out of me, because I think we're wired up to love a parent, and a parent is wired up to love us. Short story to end this is that I did describe to my dad my struggle with him and my telling him that I loved him, and he was able to tell me he loved me too, which was a great reconciliation, because my dad died somewhat shortly after that at a fairly young age, 66. So one of the foundations of my book is the importance of expressing unconditional love to your young adult, because that creates that sense of security, and is especially important if you've got kids that are kind of acting out, teens or young adults, and you're getting into trouble because they start to wonder whether their behavior makes them unlovable in some way. And then fast forward to my private practice here in the last 10 years, and I've been getting a lot of parents calling me about kids that are not progressing in their young adult developmental tasks of independence and identity and intimacy, building relationships. And so I just decided to specialize in that area. So I've got the young adult experience, and I've got now the parent experience, because I have 3 adult children now. They're no longer young adults, but at the time they were a little bit younger. So that's the origin of this. Oh, and then I just decided to write it, because I've had a website, I've been doing workshops, and I thought, well, why don't I put this into writing for parents so I can have more visibility, more distribution of the concepts that I have.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now coming to the topic itself, Dr. Jack, means what do you mean by that? The parents launch code, loving and letting go of our adult children. I thought in the US, at 18 years, the children, they go out of their home to become self-independent, to become independent, live their own good life. So why is it that some parents find it difficult? Help us understand what it all means, especially for a audience perhaps in India, which has a different culture, or many other parts of the world.
Well, yeah, we had talked about this earlier, that the U.S. has more of an independent culture, focus on independence. And so there is a tradition here that typically by 18 or at least 21, you should be on your own. That's kind of a expectation, I think, that parents have here. So over time now, with starting with my generation, boomers, we've invested more in the happiness and success of our young adults, and we hang on to them, I think, a little bit too long, and that may cause them to hang on to us too, because we're sending a message we're not sure they can make it. So parents start to get anxious if they're 21, 22, 25, and particularly the bells start to ring if they're over 25 and they're still living at home in the United States. That's indicative of something being wrong. And it's kind of a silent epidemic in a way, because the parents don't want to talk about their kid living in the basement playing video games at 23 or 25. And the kids don't want to tell their friends that they're living with mommy and daddy still. So it doesn't get talked about a whole lot. So
absolutely. So where is the problem? Is it the upbringing that is the problem, or is it the kids which have a problem, that they are not having that whole wherewithal to launch themselves? Whose job is it to launch these young adults?
Yeah, who's responsible for launching? Well, I think it's kind of a shared responsibility, basically. If the parents don't let go, the launch is not going to take place. And as the kid's hanging on to the parents, you think of a toddler hanging on to the leg of a parent. Well, this is a big toddler hanging on to the parent at some point. I think it's over time, we've become more invested in the happiness and success of our kids. And if they're not happy and successful as a teenager, that's the parent feels that responsibility to somehow help them with that. And that continues into now they're 20, 21, and they're fumbling around. They don't have a job, or haven't figured out a kind of direction in their life. The parents are still there helping them, trying to do things for them, trying to help them be successful. And I don't think give them enough room to maybe even fail a little bit as they're trying to kind of venture out into life. So, but we see more anxiety, more depression with young adults today than in past generations. So that's a factor as well. Another factor is the economics. It's just very difficult to move out of the home because of the cost that's involved in an apartment. Sometimes they have college debt. If they've graduated from college and they're back home, on average, it's around $40,000 worth of college debt too. So multiple factors are contributing to not meeting the kind of model that we have in the United States, that you should be moving on at least by 21, 25 at least. So
absolutely. So let's talk about your book. Means what have you discussed it in your book? This is such a difficult thing, and it must have taken a lot of effort to describe all this. You are America's launch coach, so you must be like Elon Musk with those heavy rockets who will be launching these young adults. Help us understand why are you known as America's launch coach? How do you help these parents to launch their kids who haven't gotten launched as yet?
Yeah. So I started to realize as I saw parents with young adults that the common theme was this inability to let go and launch their kids, and the kids' inability to let go. So that's when I started to kind of trademark my America's Launch Coach label. And it's really a number of practices that I talk about in the book that parents need to demonstrate or strengthen that can help them be able to. I think two things I'm after. One is to launch successfully, and the other is to avoid estrangement, that the child cuts off from the parent. And my definition of a healthy developmental process and launch doesn't just include becoming independent, financially independent, self-sufficient, but it has to do with staying positively connected with the parent too. We don't want the child to the young adult to leave and say, okay, I don't want any contact with you anymore with the parents, because I don't think that's a healthy situation for either the parent or the young adult. But that phenomena has increased in the United States. 1 out of 4 young adults cut off their relationship with their parents here in the United States at one time or another, typically for about 5 months, 5 or 6 months. And some just cut it off completely. But the practices that I talk about will, I think, prevent that kind of cutoff and will ensure that there's a positive relationship while they move on and out of the house. So I talked about unconditional love as one of the practices. A second one is, and this is probably a little bit counterintuitive, but I say you need to get closer to your kids, young adults, in the young adult period, not by control and directing, but by supporting independence and identity development. How can we help you become who you want to be? What do you want to be in life, and what's important to you, and how can we reinforce your values, and how can we help you be more independent? So the parent doesn't just say, hands off, you're 18 or you're 20, I'm not involved anymore. But so that second part is strengthening the relationship. Then I have 2 practices that are really important to address unresolved issues in the family. The first one is the practice of apology. And I think most parents, at least I think parents in this country I always think there's the guiltiest segment of our society. They feel like, particularly if your child or your young adult's having problems, oh, I must have done something wrong. It must have been because of this or that. A lot of times it may be a divorce that the parents went through, and they think, oh, we've damaged the kids now. So I say to parents, just apologize, take responsibility for it. That will reduce your guilt about it, and it'll soften any resentment that the young adult might feel towards you too. If you're just saying, I'm sorry, I can't come back and do it again, I'm sorry. And sometimes we have to forgive ourselves as parents because we didn't do what maybe we thought we should have done, or we weren't there for their kids in some way. And so we forgive ourselves. Sometimes we have to forgive our kids, that we're angry at our kids because they've been really a problem for us or whatever. So we have to forgive. And then the next practice is the fifth practice is combining love and backbone. And this is being able to say no in love. And I say no is not a 4-letter word. Parents just have to be able to say, stick with their values. Values like being responsible, telling the truth, following through on promises, those types of things. And parents need to be able to say no to that young adult, who may want money, but why do you want money? I talk about having more of a, if you need money, you put some money into this as well, and I'll put money into it. If you want to buy a car, you want to buy some Xbox or something like that, I'm not going to just give you the money. I have to teach your kids to be responsible. And that helps them stand on their own, is that ability to say no. to have that firmness that they have to face. And then the last thing is the process of just saying goodbye, letting go. And in the last part of my book, in that last chapter, I talk about writing a letter to your young adult as if your young adult's going away someplace to a foreign country. You may not see him again for quite a while, and maybe they don't come back or something. You don't see him. But what are the things you want to say to them? How much you love them, how much you value them, how important they are, how many gifts they have, and your hopes for the future. And that provides a kind of closure for the parents, a way to say, we love you, but we recognize we have to kind of let go. And it's a little bit of a bittersweet time when you have to let go of the kids, even if it's been a difficult relationship or problem relationship. So those practices, I think, help launch the kids successfully and help prevent this estrangement that happens.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Jack, is this book only for the parents, or there are any lines for the children also, for the young adults?
Well, it's basically for the parents, because I've thought maybe I need to have a companion book for the young adult that says, hey, here's some things that you have to do. And I do show in one of my illustrations in there, here's the parents' responsibility, here's the young adult's responsibility. But this is I'm really most concerned about helping the parents at this point. So,
right. And what about the expectations? See, if the young adults are staying at their parents' place, then they are either having their own challenges, and parents also look at it differently. So how do you solve those challenges? Just by sending them out of your house and ask them to lead their life? Or is there it's like you say, people talk about healing, that needs to be done before anything else. Here, how do you take care of those challenges? Because those will still remain until you don't address them.
Yeah, it's I wrote this one of my blogs. I said, never evict your child from the house, And what I mean by that is that parents need to establish some rules or guidelines for life in the family and living at home. And if the young adult fails to follow those, if the young adult is using illicit drugs, if the young adult's stealing from the family, violating some basic kind of rules in the family, and sometimes the young adult has threatened, well, you kick me out, I'll never talk to you again. Well, I say a young adult can leave the family in two ways. One is to say, I need to move out and I want some help moving out. I'm going to get an apartment with some friends or whatever. But the other way a young adult can say that they want to leave is by not abiding by the rules and expectations of the family. So we don't kick them out. They choose to leave by either their communication of that or their actions. And I try to help parents understand that you're not kicking them out. They can stay if they just follow the guidelines in the family. And there's a large percentage of parents, just to be clear about this from a proportion standpoint, I say over 60, maybe 60, 70% of parents who have young adults living at home, it goes pretty well. There's no big problems. They communicate well. The young adult maybe has a job and is paying some rent or helping out at home or cooking some meals or whatever. So it isn't the majority of young adults living at home in the United States, I think it's going pretty well for both the parents and the young adult. But you're talking about the kind of problem situations that come up. And yet I think the parents just have to stand by their rules and say, hey, this is what we expect of you if you're going to live here at home. I also tell the parents that they need to engage that young adult in more roommate type behavior, independent type behavior, where they have to do their laundry, they have to clean up their room, they have to help with chores around the house, they have to cook some meals, and they have to pay some rent. So when the parents put those kinds of expectations on them, it makes for an easier transition into living on their own. because they've learned to do that at home. So
Absolutely, absolutely. What was the most challenging part of writing such a book, Dr. Jack? Or was it very easy for you?
what part of the book?
Challenging part of writing this book.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it's hard. It's hard to write. I like writing, but you have to be really disciplined about it. And I've had my book edited by probably 3 or 4 people, one professional editor, and then a lot of kind of beta readers of the book. So it's gone through a number of iterations, and it just takes a long time if you're really trying to develop some really important, solid content and communicate it well. It's not an easy task, So
Absolutely. So this book and any other book that is in the pipeline, Dr. Jack, and anything else that you are doing, you want the world to know about?
Well, I have some shorter books that are online too at Amazon. One of them's called Parenting with Love and Backbone, which kind of addresses that problem behavior kind of issue at home. And then there's a few other books that relate to the practices that I brought together in this book. So they're kind of smaller versions of each of those practices. So sometimes people may just want to buy one of those. It's a cheaper edition. Although this, if you download it, I think it's like $2.99 or something if you download it onto Kindle or whatever. So it's not that expensive if you have that option. I have had the suggestion and thinking of doing a workbook for parents so that it actually give them the exercises. And these are the things that you need to do in kind of a checklist workbook guidance kind of thing. So if I do that, it'd probably be, I don't know if it'd be this fall. It might be in the first part of next year too. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So coming to the Parents Launch Code itself, what do you want readers, what key insights you want them to take away from the book?
well, I think that the importance of expressing unconditional love to your kids. For some families, it's very natural. For other families, it's not particularly comfortable for whatever reason. I live in a part of the United States, Minnesota, which is very Scandinavian, and I think Scandinavian culture is not one that's necessarily real warm and affectionate and communicative in terms of expressing love. But I think that securing that relationship is important, and then making the transition from control and direction to consulting and coaching. If parents don't make that shift, if they keep trying to control and direct, then there's a couple possibilities. One, that the child never gets out of the house because the parent's still controlling everything, or there's a rebellion by the child, and then there could be that breach where they say, okay, I'm out of here, I'm cutting off from you, I'm not talking to you again because you're just too controlling. So that concept of shifting that behavior as a parent, which a lot of people do in a normal process of the kid getting older and being more independent. But I think consciously saying, okay, I'm going to listen to you and hear what you want to do. That's the coaching part, and try to support what you want to do. And then the consulting part is more offering your experience. But I always tell parents to do this in a particular way, and I kind of call it a sandwich approach. And that is to tell your young adult, hey, I have some experience in this area. I know some things that I think might be helpful, but it's your decision. Like if it's a career or a job situation, right? And then you give your consultation. Well, these are things to consider and look at the pros and cons. And then at the end of that, you say again, it's your decision. You have to make the decision. And I've done that with my kids because I like to give them my input, but I don't want them to feel like I'm telling them what to do. And a lot of parents will just back off. Well, I stopped telling them anything because, I shouldn't do that anymore. They're on their own, or they're older or whatever. But I think there's an alternative to that, and that's to do this kind of sandwich approach, by offering an opinion. First of all, saying, not gonna, you have to make your own decision. Here's my ideas. Go ahead and make your own decision. So that's probably another key concept in the book.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dr. Jack. There is much to learn about all this, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you. A lot of parents would want to connect with you. A lot of people would want to read this book and get the insights that they need. What is the best way for them to do so?
Well, I think it's on Amazon, so I think that's probably the best place to get it. I would also say that parents should go to my website, which is entitled parentslettinggo.com. Parentslettinggo.com. So I picked that title for my website because that's kind of what I'm trying to help parents do. So there's a lot of resources. I've probably written 150 blogs on there that come from what parents have raised as questions or concerns. So I try to address those in the blogs, but get on that website, get on my mailing list. There's a place where you can get on the mailing list, and you'll get these blogs and further information about the whole process of parents in young adulthood. So
wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KJ. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
yeah, thank you.